Hello and welcome back to the online family program coming to you from the Sunshine Coast Health Center. So this is part 3 in a 4-part series about interpersonal boundaries. And today I'm going to talk about setting boundaries. So how do you know when you need to set a boundary? Well, it's usually our feelings that tip us off. For example, if you're feeling resentful, this is a sure sign that you need to set a boundary or clarify your boundary. Be consistent with your boundary. Other feelings too, like feeling pushed or pulled or stepped on, that taken advantage of, those kinds of things. Those are all good signs that you need to set a boundary. Also, feeling hurt is a big sign that you need to set a boundary, because boundaries really are about protecting yourself. So thinking of that example again of the loved one that borrows money and doesn't pay it back. Right? Some of those feelings could have arisen, and so setting a good boundary to protect yourself from further being taken advantage of or hurt or whatever. So the first step in setting a boundary is to define the boundary. So to define the boundary, you need to know what is it that you're in control of and what are you not in control of, and then come up with something that is clear. And be careful with this that you're not doing anything that's unrealistic. Try to steer away from ultimatums, for example, because they're often harder to follow through with. You want to come up with something that you're going to be able to follow through with. So the second step in setting a boundary is to clearly communicate it to the other person. They're not psychic. They need to know where you're coming from. So what can be helpful here is, usually helpful, is to give an explanation. Hopefully this doesn't just lead into an argument, to try to avoid that. But an explanation can be helpful if you're trying to get the person to understand where you're coming from. So being assertive and calm throughout the whole conversation is going to do you well. And then the third step is to be consistent with your boundaries. To have people take you seriously, you need to follow through with what you said, right? Now, the thing with consistency in your boundaries is that they need to be flexible but consistent to your values. So, I'll give you an example here. So, let's say that person that borrowed money from you, who in their addiction didn't pay it back. Let's say it's a while later and they're in their recovery and they're doing well and they're building that trust back up again, and they ask to borrow some money specifically, for help with their security deposit on an apartment. You might consider doing that at this time because, the situation has changed. And so to be consistent with your values, your original boundary may be more flexible or not. But the important point is that your boundary is consistent with your values. So next week, I'm going to talk about overcoming challenges to setting boundaries. And I hope you join me then.